TellTale Atheist is someone who is willing to stand up for the LGBT+ community when it suits him. Despite this, he has a reputation for being gay-friendly, having numerous videos railing against Christians who spread hateful propaganda, a fact that makes the evidence contained within this video, evidence of him defending gay genocide as a position deserving respect, all the more important. If you want to present yourself as a defender of gay rights, then you have to actually, defend the rights of gay people. And that includes the right to exist. But before we can discuss that, I just need to give a content warning for the following: transphobia, homophobia, genocide, gaslighting, HIV/AIDS, rape and sexual assault, child rape, child abuse, school shootings, drug use, and conversion efforts. All this began after warning a friend on Twitter about TellTale Atheist and his actions in 2019. The first relating to the Faithless forum, in which he asserted I had instigated violence at said event, and the second being his defense of gay genocide as a position deserving respect. Sadly, word got back to him, so he subsequently ordered his fans to dogpile me in attempts to get me banned from Twitter. Of course, people demanded to see evidence, and whilst I supplied a video outlining his dishonesty surrounding 2019's Faithless forum, I hadn't done so in regards to his defense of gay genocide. Now, this is something I'd always planned on talking about, but since it happened after Rachel Oates starred me in 2019, I've had to spend the last year healing from said abuse. But you know what? Whilst not fully recovered, I feel strong enough now to tackle the issue, and it's not like I'm being left with much of a choice. Why a video? Why not just share things on Twitter? Well, two reasons. First, Twitter is the death of nuance. This topic requires a lot of explanation since the context is 7 years old. Second, it's much easier to flag stuff on Twitter than it is YouTube, and false flagging is a method TellTale seems very partial to, as we'll see later. Now, in order to really grasp this case, we must first acknowledge two important events that occurred in December of 2013. The first was Duck Dynasty star Phil Robertson going on record comparing same-gender attraction to bestiality. The second was a school shooting at Arapahoe High School, Colorado. The first event is important since it led to the creation of the video titled Real Talk on Homosexuality by former YouTuber iEmanuella. iEmanuella was a Christian YouTuber, a white cis woman who rose to popularity with a flashcard video titled A Girl's Message to All Christians, a copy of which is still available on YouTube. She relied on presenting as a very soft and open woman, one who was perfectly fine getting along with people of all sorts. Look, she even quoted Gandhi in her flashcard video. Isn't that nice? One thing she couldn't accept, though, were the queers, especially their criticism of Christians who compared relationships between two consenting adults to animal rape. That just wouldn't do. So there she was, ready to give us a real talk on homosexuality. Here is but a small taste of what followed.
But the truth is, the LGBT community knows nothing about what real Christians believe. So let's get biblical. Leviticus 18 verse 22. You shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination. Leviticus 20 verse 13. If a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. I was feeling what Jesus feels towards people who are struggling with this. It was pure, unutterable love and concern. Not the love that pats on the back and says it's all good. It was the love that seeks to reform. I believe that homosexuality as a practice is a blatant attack on the character of God. Two things were instituted at creation: the Sabbath and the holy union of marriage between a man and a woman. Many people struggle with anger issues since childhood. Does that justify them walking into a school one day and shooting 20 kids? Desire does not excuse behavior. Many people struggle with a desire to touch people. Does that justify molestation? Others struggle with sexual desires towards children. Does that justify pedophilia? Whether we like it or not, there was a time when homosexuality was not okay. okay. We have to ask ourselves, are we going to reach a place in time where pedophilia or molestation will be justified? Whoa, hold up. Homosexuality is different. It's not hurting anyone. Not hurting anyone? In 2005, according to the Joint United Nations Program on AIDS and the CDC, in San Francisco, 90% of all new AIDS infections are among men who have sex with men. In Los Angeles, 71% of those living with AIDS are gay or bisexual men. Not to mention the more than 50% of all AIDS transmission in the US to be due to male-male sexual contact. Last I checked, AIDS hurts. I understand, like I've never understood before, that it is indeed a struggle. But Jesus did not come down here, shed his blood, and give his power so that people could be overcome or given to weaknesses.
For those who don't know, Leviticus chapter 20 verse 12 is the kill passage. The full passage reads as, quote, "If a man has sexual relations with a man, as one does with a woman, both of them have done what is detestable. They are to be put to death. Their blood will be on their own heads." End quote. iEmanuella knew this when she chose to assert it as God's divine judgment for gay and bisexual men on earth. She knew this and seemingly believed other Christians would, whilst outsiders wouldn't, meaning she felt she could use it as a dog whistle. Sadly for her, we did know the rest of the passage. That's not the only hateful thing in her video either. We also have clear support of conversion attempts, pseudoscientific methods meant to turn gay and bisexual people straight. Methods often labelled as therapy, but are actually a form of psychological torture. Not only do said methods not work, but they increase attempted suicide from 8% to 42%. We also have her comparing being gay or bisexual to wanting to gun down children or molest people. Again, her video came out a week after a school shooting, and this was back before tragedy fatigue had set in and shootings had started to be seen as just another part of American life. This was a very high-strung topic, and she exploited the pain surrounding that in order to demonize gay and bisexual people. Then we have her argument that HIV is a gay disease caused by same-gender intercourse. It's not. There's nothing inherently dangerous about same-gender intercourse. But when you refuse to teach inclusive sex education, make the physical tools for safe sex impossible to access, and create a culture that destabilizes all same-gender relationships by targeting them with abuse, leading to an increase in risk-taking behavior like unprotected sex and drug use, this is the result. The AIDS crisis was a self-fulfilling prophecy inflicted upon the queer community by the Christian religion. If this were God's will, he wiped out an entire generation of gay and bisexual people because of who they love. Yet perhaps the worst part in all this is iEmanuella's explanation for why she's getting involved. The part where she talks about feeling what Jesus feels, i.e., the love that seeks to reform, comes at the end of her noting that a friend or family member of hers came out about their sexuality. And iEmanuella's immediate response to that was to try and destroy them, whilst publicly glorifying said behaviour as an act of love. Two of the things iEmanuella forwards in her video, Kill and Convert, are aspects of genocide. Suffice to say, 19-year-old me was not happy. I actually came out on my holiday to record an unscripted response, since I didn't think it could wait. And yeah, I swore a few times in the video, mostly whilst yelling, "Learn what consent is." I told the person who wished me dead whilst pretending to be a kind and loving person to fuck off. I have a real problem with that sort of emotional manipulation. And I wasn't alone in responding. Various other secularist and LGBT+ activists spoke up, effectively tearing away the mask iEmanuella had used to gain prominence. Unable to get that back, she left YouTube shortly after. Meanwhile, there was a back and forth between the secular and religious communities over what had happened, with the conservative Christians framing her as some sort of martyr. Over time, however, most people forgot, which is where TellTale's accusations come in. Following Rachel Oates darvoing me after I publicly called her out, TellTale decided to step in and defame me. To do so, he posted a thread on the 8th of September in which he stated, quote, FYI, I've been doing some investigating on our friend. This isn't the first time this has happened, although historically it's been directed at Christians. Still not good to attack people with ad hominems and abuse, regardless of their beliefs. If you're interested, check out what happened with the YouTube channel State of Daniel. You can also check out the iEmanuella situation, though that one is harder to track down since he deleted her channel as a result of the abuse. All this stuff happened 5 to 6 years ago. How many victims are there? Does he know how to engage with people in a healthy way, or does it all boil down to Tommy McCarthy level hatred? End quote. A few key details to note. First, this isn't two cases. The State of Daniel video linked by TellTale is about iEmanuella. Second, I noticed how the video TellTale link started at 1 minute and 52 seconds in, skipping over the introduction. Maybe that's because Daniel openly acknowledged that his previous video had been flagged for hate speech, and whilst he'd asked for a human review, he didn't think it would be allowed to remain up.
About 2 days ago, I uploaded a video about Mr. Repzion, iEmanuella, and internet bullying. And not even 48 hours later, I received 2 notifications from YouTube that the video has been filed under a privacy complaint and for hate speech, and so these cases are being investigated at the moment. And even though I feel like I've done nothing wrong, I have this strong suspicion that the video is going to be removed. So I did want to reply to some criticism before that happens. And in particular, I wanted to reply to EssenceOfThought.
Kind of an important detail to skip over, one that TellTale had to have known since he put the timestamp afterwards. Third, notice how TellTale's tweet implies that I single-handedly chased iEmanuella off the internet. Even Daniel acknowledges that there were other parties involved, as seen in the segment shown, one of them being Mr. Repzion, this being before the Gamergate split. The fact is, a lot of queer and then queer supportive atheists responded on the matter for what are hopefully obvious reasons. Now, for those that don't know, State of Daniel is a far-right Christian who I first came into contact with over his anti-abortion stance, and is a visible Trump supporter who openly spreads lies about voter fraud. Hell, in the video TellTale linked, Daniel goes to great lengths to tell us about his personal hero, Sarah Palin. And whilst all this doesn't necessarily impact the strength of his criticisms of me, he could be wrong on everything else but correct here, it should be a red flag. Is this person generally reliable? No. This is especially important since the clips taken from my video are a mishmash lacking all context. It's almost like showing a person angry but not showing why a person is angry is a common framing technique used by the far right. Remember, TellTale started his post by declaring to the world that he'd been doing some investigating, part of which is being critical of your sources and checking all available evidence. Because, pro tip, a single video is not research, a fact that anyone who has dealt with propaganda pieces like Caleb and Sophia should know. If TellTale wanted to do some investigating, he should have checked my original response to iEmanuella, which is still publicly available. Said response is one of the top results when someone searches iEmanuella and EssenceOfThought together. What's more is, I supply an archived copy of iEmanuella's original video in the description of that response. None of this is hard to find, leaving TellTale no excuse. When he declares that he has been investigating the topic, that's him going, trust me. Failing to do that research isn't just negligence on his part, but also exploitation of the trust he's built with his audience. Nothing about TellTale's post lets you onto the true nature of what iEmanuella was trying to sell her audience. In the opening tweet, TellTale boils everything down to the nebulous term beliefs, which, considering the fact that TellTale is perceived to be gay-friendly, is somewhat eerie. The fact that it'd go out of his way to hide such intense, blatant, and unapologetic homophobia right under the noses of his audience is not a comforting fact. And he does this before going on to berate me at the end of his thread over how I responded to someone quite literally calling for the death of me. I hope we are able to comprehend the level of inhumanity that takes. I was outed during my second to last year at school. I was put through endless verbal, physical, and sexual violence as a result of that, oftentimes right in front of teachers who did absolutely nothing. I know better than to rely on the good nature of others to challenge bigotry. The only strength I can rely on in that regard is my own. It's on me to set boundaries and expectations of others, and to call it out when they transgress those barriers. And yet, because I had the audacity to swear when confronted with someone who very literally wanted me dead or tortured, that apparently tarnishes my character. The implication here being that it's my role in life as a queer person to consistently throw myself on the knife of others and thank them for it. This is why I noted that I didn't care about respectability politics in the description of my response to iEmanuella, which is a big part of why I haven't archived it like the rest of my work, because it was an important stepping stone in my journey, reaching the destination of not allowing others to strip me of my anger, my pain, my sorrow, all the things that make me human, when it comes to defending my existence as a queer person. Now, I expect some of TellTale's fans to argue that people are separate to the positions they hold, therefore TellTale was not defending the gay genocide iEmanuella was advocating when he argued that she should be respected. To that I say, you don't get to strip my anger of context. When I made that video, I wasn't responding to some generic Christian. I was responding to someone actively advocating genocide of demographics I belong to. When you try to police my response within that context, you're not defending this person. You are defending the position I am responding to at that very moment, which, in this case, is gay genocide. Things didn't get any better with TellTale's response to my claim, in which he stated that, quote, "Does anybody actually believe that I would ever defend gay genocide? This is horrific, disgusting slander," which is pretty standard from EssenceOfThought. If anybody feels like reporting that tweet for me, I would appreciate it. I have them blocked. End quote. Whilst I'd literally just wanted to warn a friend about his actions, it turned out to be a great way to get him to double down. Not only did I have him lying about the situation involving iEmanuella, whether he was lying about researching it or what actually happened, but now I have him lying about defending her views on gay genocide, whilst also trying to get me banned. Now, whilst my claim remains up, another tweet was removed. The tweet, which was posted on the 9th of May 2020, read as quote, "Then he went ahead, tried to dig up dirt on me, and reached back to forward a Christian girl who had compared homosexuality to school shootings, before declaring AIDS was God's punishment for their actions, presenting her as some poor victim because the LGBT+ community responded." End quote. Now, what was it flagged for? Well, hateful conduct. That is, the promotion of violence against, threatening, or harassing, quote, "other people on the basis of race, ethnicity, national origin, sexual orientation, gender, gender identity, religious affiliation, age, disability, or serious disease." End quote. Except I'd done none of that. I was actually calling that out. Like, even if this had been flagged for harassment, that'd still be wrong, but there's a stretch to be made there. Here, there's just no case to be made. This is TellTale quite literally getting his fans to abuse Twitter's hateful conduct terms of service to false flag queer creators for daring to discuss his support of very real hateful conduct, which is a special kind of shitty. Sadly, Twitter lacks a review process, meaning I couldn't challenge the false flag. Thankfully, it was just part of a conversation I was having with someone else. It wasn't some important, hey, come here and look at this moment, so it doesn't really bother me so much that it's gone. What bothers me is the aforementioned abuse of the very systems meant to protect marginalized groups. But apparently, that's just how TellTale handles criticism. Compare that to the way in which I handled his accusations way back at the start of 2019. I'll give a quick recap of everything, but for a more detailed breakdown with references, please check out my video, Trans Atheist Starts Riot at Faithless Forum 2019, TellTale Atheist is a Liar. So back in 2019, I'd called out YouTuber Rationality Rules for posting a transphobic hit piece on trans athletes. After a tense few days, we'd reached an accord where he'd agreed to fix his mistakes. Weeks passed while he did nothing, yet in that time, discussion shifted to the upcoming Faithless Forum. During a livestream I appeared on, YouTuber Surus mentioned how people might try to start rumors about what happened between me and Rationality Rules, so I put out a video reminding everyone that we'd reached a point of agreement, so please leave him alone. Though I did note it'd be appreciated if they could keep an ear out for and challenge any malicious rumors that attempted to reframe things as me being the aggressor. So the event happens, I'm still in India, and one day I find myself tagged in a post. The post was by TellTale Atheist telling another person to stop including me in their suggestions for secular channels on account of how I'd apparently started shit at the Faithless Forum, effectively trying to blacklist me from other people's personal suggestions. Something that's rather ironic if you consider the narratives he and others would start spinning about me later on. So I pressed him on the whole starting shit statement, and soon enough his claims had escalated to events comparable to me burning down religious buildings. He argued that even if I hadn't personally called for them, I should still have the decency to apologize for the actions of my followers. So I continued to ask for evidence. TellTale told me that the whole thing had been caught on camera and that it would be published shortly. That never happened. TellTale then apologized to me, only to make it very clear in the same Twitter thread that he'd only apologized to move things away from his lie, not because he genuinely felt he'd wronged me. To this day, TellTale has faced no repercussions for his lies, in spite of the fact that he was an official organizer for the Faithless Forum. Of course, we know the rest. Rationality Rules doubled down, the rest of the secular community circled the wagons to defend transphobia, and Rachel Oates called on her 100,000 fans to circumvent my block of her and abuse me. When I clapped back, Rachel Oates resorted to Darvoing me, portraying me as a violent trans person, effectively silencing all criticism of Rationality Rules whilst getting a free holiday. I, meanwhile, have spent the last year recovering, though I have warned others about TellTale's actions in conversation. Nothing grand like a post or a video, just me going, be careful around TellTale on account of these things. This got noticed, I got dogpiled, and the demand for evidence that started this whole thing was made. Yet drawing this back to TellTale's usage of false flagging, notice how when he accused me of instigating violence, my immediate response was to question his story with the available facts, not get him banned. But the moment he comes to know I have something on him, his first response was to shut me down as fast as possible. He doesn't even try to call my bluff, like I did with him and the Faithless Forum. Which is an interesting mentality, this desperate need to shut down external information before it's even gone out. That, mixed with this in-group, out-group hostility reliant on emotional and behavioral control that demands absolute rejection of all doubt. I mean, I even had one of TellTale's followers flat out tell me that they would not watch my video unless he was able to refute it on his channel. All seems almost familiar, though I can't remember where for the life of me. I'm sure it'll come back to bite me at some point. What's also interesting is the fact that TellTale had seen me respond to someone else on the subject of iEmanuella back in May of 2019. On the thread in which TellTale got angry at me for making a joke about H-Bomber Guy, tying out emoticon and all, user Blanco Indian jumped in, and whilst their tweets no longer exist in 2021, I think my response of quote, "Oh wow, you're defending the girl who quoted Bible passages calling for gay people to be stoned and think that makes me look bad?" end quote, makes it pretty clear who I was talking about. So it's not like my response to this issue was unknown or even hard to find, meaning that had TellTale been better at his job, he should have been able to predict my reaction when he tried to make the same argument. So with all that laid out before you, I have to ask, if you're a fan of TellTale, if you're someone whose trust he exploited just to try and make me look bad, is this how you like being treated? I could never imagine using my audience that way. When I say I've done research, I've done the research. When I say I've got evidence, I supply the evidence. I might take time doing so, but it can never be said that I failed to deliver. Meanwhile, TellTale has actively misled you multiple times. He's openly exploited your trust for his own ends, and as someone who actually cares about integrity, it's kind of upsetting to see him get away with it. Ultimately, I can't force you to respect yourself. That's something you'll have to work on. All I can do is give you the tools and the knowledge to see what TellTale really is. So with that out of the way, the only other significant event left to discuss is what took place on the 22nd of December, 2019. I woke up rather late that day, only to discover that I'd received a message from a friend. They told me that one of the tweets I'd replied to had actually doxed TellTale, and that TellTale had messaged my friend to plead with me on his behalf to remove my response. Now, I did that quickly, however, I remembered I'd seen someone post the same name to a number of my videos, so I went ahead and removed them as well. So why am I bringing this up? Well, because I think it shows just how different TellTale is from me. From the way he has treated me, I'd never feel safe enough to message him, directly or indirectly. He has helped others inflict tangible harm on me and my loved ones. And no, I won't be dragged down to his level in that regard. I could have just ignored his pleas or removed the one on Twitter, but pretended I just hadn't seen the ones on YouTube. But I didn't. I proactively hunted them down and removed them. This is after TellTale had chosen to slander me twice, at what was one of my lowest points health-wise. And yet, in spite of all that, TellTale still felt secure enough in the strength of my moral convictions to ask me for a favor. And how did he repay me for that? Well, after TellTale told my friend to thank me on his behalf, he still chose to order his fans to target me with false flagging, and yet people pretend like I'm the cold one who can't work with others. Though, one thing I will acknowledge in relation to the whole iEmanuella thing is that it's certainly possible that I took things too far. For example, while I fully support the punching of Nazis, the usage of sexual violence in such situations is still inexcusable. Though the fact TellTale himself failed to show evidence of that, instead falling back on Daniel's response that says nothing about the situation, would suggest I didn't. But I'm open to being proven wrong, the key word here being proven. If you think such a thing happened with my video, please watch my response, come back and tell me exactly where you think I crossed the line. Because that's a conversation I'm open to having. But you need to be specific. That's why I reference everything, right down to showing the timestamps of any segments of video I use, so that you, the viewer, always have a way of checking my claims for yourself. I do everything in my power to ensure you have the tools you need to challenge me on everything I say. So please, if you doubt what I've said, use them to your advantage. If you have any questions or criticisms, do post them below. Just know that abuse won't make it through. If you appreciate what we do here on the channel, do know that you can support us via Patreon. We no longer monetize our videos, meaning that Patreon is the sole source of income for the channel, allowing us to keep it running. On that note, we'd just like to thank the following patrons: Hannah Banghart, Matthew Kovac, Soraya and Katie, Garrett Van Vorst, Chelsea Williams, Sosh Daniels, and Justin Allen. And for myself, Udita and Levi, take care now.